Hello and welcome back to the Beth Twist Heartstring Samplery Floss Tube video tutorial series. This is the second tutorial I've made and hopefully it'll be much smoother than the first one. This is going to be a demonstration of how I make my silver dollar scissor fobs. Here are two that are finished. One with rickrack, here's the back, it's just a quilting cotton on the back. One I finished with a handmade little braid that I tasseled at the bottom, and it's got just plain linen on the back. These little motifs on both of these can be found in my the first of my festive little fobs pattern series for Valentine motifs. Notice all of the lovely pink and red. These are meant to be given as gifts. You could make them in any way you want. They don't have to be made as silver dollar fobs, but that's an idea that I had years ago, and I really like them because they have a nice little weight to them. They're not lightweight. And I was always fascinated with silver dollars as a kid. And yes, they are still available. Even though they don't make them anymore, they're still in circulation. So you could, I get them from a friend who manages a gas station, and people will pay with silver dollars and she holds on to them for me, and I buy them from her for $1 a piece. Or you can go to your bank. You could choose, instead of silver dollars, to just use acid-free cardstock, but like I said, I like the weight, and it's a fun little way to finish them. So you see here in front of me everything I need to make the fobs. Hopefully, last time I forgot several things and I had to make it up as I went along. We have our stitched motif, which this particular motif is from the second in my festive fob series, which is for springtime, and you can see how nicely it coordinates with this one because I'm using a lot of the same thread colors. It's just that the theme of each grouping is different. I have a cardstock, just an index weight template, which I created by tracing the silver dollar, slightly larger than the silver dollar though. And I have some cotton fabric for the backing. This is probably my favorite fabric ever, and they don't, of course, you know, they only made a single run of it, and I'm down to my very last scraps, but it's pretty sure it was a Windham, and it was all sampler prints and really lovely and wonderful. I've got some bits of felted wool, glue stick, and I've got some rickrack that I'm going to use for trim. I'm going to finish it like this little guy. And the rickrack, I mean, the sky's the limit on what you use for trim. Obviously, this is braided floss that coordinates with the colors in the motif, and I used all 6 strands of floss to make a braid. The rickrack I'm using for this particular fob is called Brick House, and it's from Lady Dot Creates. I have a needle threaded with a neutral double strand of floss, and then I have a needle threaded with a color that complements the Brick House, and in this case it's Weeks Dye Works Aztec Red. Okay, let us start. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to take the glue stick, and we are going to put some glue on poor Eisenhower's face, or we can do it on the back. Let's do it on the back. I don't really want to put glue on Eisenhower. Seems a little bit, I don't know, unpatriotic. So we're going to put it on the Liberty Bell instead. By the way, this is non-toxic, acid-free, washable glue stick, so if you ever find yourself in need of money, you could actually take this all apart and wash the glue off and go to your local gas station and spend it on whatever you need to spend it on. Okay, so now that we've got that felted wool stuck on there, we're just going to trim the excess around the edges. And it doesn't have to be super precise. I'm kind of just gnawing at it because this is all going to be covered up. You're basically just adding a layer of padding. If you don't put this on here, it's fine, but what you'll find is the shininess of the coin will actually glint. It'll show through your linen when the sun hits it or light hits it, and I like that shine to be muted, so I put a little padding on there. This is going to go directly behind your little stitched motif, so you can just set that aside. Now for your back piece, you're going to take your little paper template, and that's what you use as a guide for cutting your fabric, which I already did. What you're going to do with your neutral colored thread is sew a running stitch all the way around the outside. The end of this is knotted, so it will stop there. But it's just a loose, you don't have to have your stitches close together. It doesn't have to look pretty because this is all going to be hidden when you assemble your little scissor fob. So stick pretty close to the edge, within about 1/4 of an inch. And you're just going to go all the way around until you meet up at the other end where your knot is, which pulled through the fabric, it looks, oh no, it's right there. Okay. I thought I was further along than I was. Okay, almost there. Okay, now when you get to your other side, you want your thread to emerge from the right side of the fabric, not the inside. Okay, now you're going to place your little paper coin there, and then you're going to just tug this in it like a little drawstring all the way around the outside. Now you don't have to knot this, just hold it with your thumb, and then I'm going to go take this to my ironing board and do a quick press to get that shape to hold in place. I will be right back. Okay, so after a quick press, this little circle of fabric is holding its shape on its own, so I'm going to sort of carefully, you don't want to completely pull on this, but you can now get that paper template out of there and off to the side, and you're still going to have a nice little circle. I like to then take my other little piece of wool and actually I should have cut that a little smaller than the paper template. That's a step that I forgot. You want it to fit inside of that fabric without adding bulk around the edges. So I'm just going to very unscientifically cut a little notch and then reduce the size by, I don't know, I think that's probably about 1/8 of an inch. I never, when I do finishing, I never do it exactly the same each time, and I never measure exactly right. And it usually comes out just fine. Every once in a while I'm kind of disappointed with myself, but I don't like taking the time to slow down and be precise. And I figure the little schoolgirls that made all of the lovely antiques that inspire what I do, none of what they did was precise either, so it's all good. Okay, so now I'm just going to tuck that on the inside. Doesn't have to be perfectly positioned because as you assemble it'll kind of adjust itself, but I'm trying to keep it away from the edges of the fold. Okay, so you actually don't have to knot this. You can if you want. I'm not going to bother because the iron has helped it to hold its shape on its own. So we're just going to cut that, set this little guy to the side. I'm going to re-knot the end of my double thread because we're going to repeat the process with the silver dollar side of this fob with the stitched motif. So I'm actually going to do a triple knot because often a double knot is not enough to stay in place behind the linen, depending on what count of linen you used. This is a 36 count, so it shouldn't pull through, but you never know. So again, here I have a not very well cut circle of linen, but it'll all be hidden, those uneven edges. So we're going to do a running stitch all around the outside. I'm probably about 1/8 of an inch from the outer edge of the linen on this one. Linen tends to not be quite as forgiving as cotton fabric. Just by nature it's a little bit bulkier, I guess, when you gather it. And so having my thread closer to the outside actually helps to at least make the bulky gathering come together a little more evenly. Don't ask me if that's really true, it just sounded good. I have a hunch that that's how it works. My hunches are generally right, but this being about the probably 6th or 7th silver dollar fob that I've created, I guess you could call me an expert. So we're going to do this just like we did the other side, and once we get around to our knot, we're going to make sure that the thread comes out on the front, and we're going to put wool side facing the back of the motif, and we're going to wrap it by pulling. Look how nice that is. Now, before we finish this one, because it's our motif and is the decorative part of our fob, we want to make sure that it's centered how we want it. So before you do any knotting, just make sure you kind of work on that and get it how you like it. That looks relatively even. And then just do a couple of quick lacing stitches across the back to help hold that down. And really it only needs to be done like once or twice. Okay, now, now we are going to stitch our back and front together, which is kind of the fun part of this project. So this has a top and bottom, and if you care, if you have a fabric that has a top and bottom like this one, make sure that they're facing the same way. Now what you're going to do, this one's going to have a lot of extra bulk inside. I don't know if I like that. I think what I might do is take this little guy and cut it to the shape of where the silver dollar is showing as much as I can, because what we have is the gathered area here and the gathered area here are coming together more than they have any other time I've made this, and I don't want this big bumpy back. I want it as smooth as possible. So this is going to sit down in that hole and try to help take care of that situation. You could glue that if you wanted. I think I'm just going to set it there and hope that it stays in place. Okay. Now That feels much better. Okay, so what we're gonna do is just a simple stitch all the way around the outside to connect the two. Now all of this on this particular finish is going to be hidden by the rickrack, so I'm just going to do this kind of quick and dirty and not worry too much about the evenness of my stitches. You could finish this without a trim around the outside if you wanted, but if I were doing that, I would want to pay a lot closer attention to the evenness of this seam. You could also, there's so many ways you could finish these. You could do a little whip stitch like I'm doing and add a bead each time around and just have a little beaded edge. I've actually never done that. Maybe I'll do that on one of these in this series. I've always kind of wanted to try my hand at that. You could do little X's around the outside instead of a trim, just to kind of add a little cross stitch flavor. There's really so many different ways you can finish little scissor fobs. Part of the fun of this series is just exploring all of the different ways that a little motif could be finished off. I'm excited to see all of these pieces all together when it's all said and done. There's a total of at least 9 motifs in each collection, and there will be 12 of them, released one a month. Some of the themes are seasonal, some of them are not. And when you're all done, if you stitch up each and every motif and turn it into a little fob or an ornament, you should have 108 of these cute little guys. And I'm excited. I'm going to have my husband, who I call the farm boy, I'm going to have him make a dowel tree for me. I don't know, look it up, Google it if you don't know what a dowel tree is. And I'm going to have it designed to be the right size to hold all 108 of them, so I can display them together, at least for a little while. Maybe when I take them with me to market or places like that, I think it'll be pretty cool. You could hang them on a feather tree, or you can just simply make them as gifts for all of your stitching friends. And you can make a few for me too while you're at it. No, I'm just kidding. I will have enough when this project is done. Actually, I have to give credit to the cross-stitching of this particular one, and actually these as well, to Natalie Kaplowski. She did my cross-stitching for me. So, we're just going to knot that off and trim it because we're now done with that light colored floss. You could keep going with the light colored. You see how I use the light colored and it contrasts with the colored braid on this one, but I'm going to more so mimic this finish with a thread color that complements the rickrack. So I already cut my rickrack to the length that I wanted, and I'm sorry I didn't measure this. Let's measure it really quick. Grab my handy Ace Hardware yardstick. For this particular fob, it looks like it's about 17 inches. You could go a little longer, you could go a little shorter, but my goal is to have a loop each time that's about 4 inches. It seems like a good length for being able to get around the fob and through your scissors. It would also be a good length for hanging on a feather tree, if that's what you're doing. So now we know. And what you're going to do is get your threaded needle with the color that complements. It's knotted at the end. And I don't know if this is the best way to do it, but this is how I invented to do these. You want to line up your rickrack with the seam, starting at the bottom, okay? And you're going to just come up from the bottom of your rickrack and just tack that end in place. Oh, this is not a petite, this needle. I'm used to the petite needles. I don't know what I grabbed, it's longer. It's okay. All right, so now as you go along, you are just going to, I probably should have pressed this rickrack. It's a little bit wrinkly at the end, but it will still work. So what you're going to do is you're going to attach each of the hills and valleys of the rickrack with just a simple little tack. So we're going to come into the point and kind of go around the edge of your coin and come out the other side in the valley. And then you're going to come down in the valley and go out to the next point. Go down through the point, come across to the next valley. And once you get going, you get kind of a little system. And this, again, like other finishes that I do at least, doesn't have to be super precise, because the beauty of it is that it's a little bit primitive, a little bit wonky. My husband says that I should use that word in my tutorials because it helps to demonstrate who I am. And I don't know if that means that he's saying that I'm a wonky person. I'm not really sure. He just walked in the room, so that's why I'm saying this on the tape. I guess it's not a tape, digital. Now you know, now I just aged myself. Yes, I grew up with VHS tapes and cassette tapes. And now we're at a spot where this little point of the rickrack is actually going to cover part of my motif, and I'm just going to have to not let that bother me. If I had done it right, that would have come right in between the leaves, but it's okay, because the star of the show really is the little strawberry growing out of the basket. So we are going to continue this same process until we get to the top center of this little fob, which we're almost there. Sorry if I keep pulling out of the main line of sight of this video camera. I'm still getting used to where my hands are supposed to be positioned. Okay, so when we get to the top of this, we're going to have to do something a little bit funky, which I will now demonstrate, because this is where we want our loop to go up from the top of the fob. And if we were to continue around all the way, we would then have to attach a loop, but I want it to be a continuous piece. So at this point, I'm not going to tack that little peak down. I'm going to let it just be loose for now. Set your thread aside. Now, make sure that your rickrack isn't twisted, that it's a straight line, and then you're going to bring this around so you can see where it's going to lay when it comes around to the bottom. I don't know if I'm explaining this very well, but basically the two ends start at the bottom, and then at the top it's going to pinch together, knot, and then that'll be the loop that hooks it to your scissors. So now that you know where your other end is going to line up on the bottom, just kind of hold it in place. You could pin it if you want. It's a little awkward to pin it on these little things, so I'm just going to hold it and then pick up my thread again and continue stitching around the outside, but now I'm stitching the other end of the rickrack. I sure hope that made sense to you. Hopefully, if my words don't suffice, then just watching me do it will, because it's probably not the easiest way of doing this. But it all comes together in the end. So now we're going to continue down to the bottom, stitching our peaks and valleys. So I don't know how this idea came to me in the first place. I often don't know how ideas come to me. Sometimes I wake up, excuse me, with an idea in my head, and sometimes it comes to me while I'm washing dishes or hanging laundry on the line or sweeping the floor. I've heard people say that when your hands are busy, but you're doing a task that doesn't require thought, that it frees up your mind to go to that creative place. And so this is the reason why, although I hate some household chores, I don't mind washing dishes or hanging laundry or sweeping, because I'm accomplishing something that needs to be done, but my brain is free to think. Anyway, there. Now you know a little bit more about how my brain functions, and I imagine many of you are the same way. So we're almost down to the bottom of the fob now. I think I just did something funny there. I think I reversed the way I was going about this, and I noticed this little peak over here is laying funny, so I'm going to kind of double back and convince it to lay down a little bit better with the second stitch. There, that did it. So when we get down here to the bottom, we are going to try to hide our knot, and we're almost done with this fob. The ends down here, sometimes they meet as if it was one piece of rickrack, and sometimes they overlap, which is the case with this one, and that's okay. It really doesn't bother me. You still get this nice little scallop edge all around the outside. So just to tack that end down well, I'm actually going to do a couple of stitches here on this edge so that it doesn't fray. It'll still fray a little bit, but at least this will hold it all in place. And I'm not liking this little piece here. So I'm going to come in there with my scissors and just snip it off. And then stitch over that once. Okay. Now, here's a cool trick that you probably know, but that I didn't know for years, and when I discovered it, I was super excited. Oh, I'm actually not gonna show it to you quite yet. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna run my thread, because I hate tying knots, I'm going to, in increments, run my thread through the back of my project and bring it out to the top. And if you go back in the same hole you just came out, you'll never know. Okay, I'm going to do a little bit of tacking up here where the two rickracks come together, just to avoid having sort of a gap there, I guess. So I'm just going to pinch them with my fingers and do a little roundy there, and then through the backing fabric out to the front. And then a little roundy here. And this is actually going to be hidden too. Now, bring this back out here, and then this is what I learned that I thought was cool. Tie a knot, just a single knot in your, sorry, I have an alarm on my phone, I'm going to turn it off really quick. So the knot is a little ways out from the fabric, and then you're going to just poke your needle into your cotton and pull until that knot is buried, and then snip it off. Voila! Hidden knot. Okay, now I'm going to do what I did with this one, and I'm going to tie just a quick little knot at the top to sort of finish it. And rickrack is not the easiest thing to tie in a knot. It's a little bit unruly, but it's worth it in the end. So we're just going to kind of work our way up through, pull, and there you have a little scissor fob with a silver dollar inside.